When Willow announced her engagement, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The heiress was finally going to get married, and I could at last leave. But just as I was pulling my suitcase and about to go through security, she appeared in a wedding dress, her eyes reddened, ordering me not to leave. She looked truly beautiful in that wedding dress. Still as proud as a princess, just like when she was a child. Even when asking me to stay, she used the tone of a command. But I only gently moved away the hand she held onto mine. Heiress, it's time for me to go. Chapter 1. Willow was the heiress. The type born into a wealthy family. When I was very young, I already knew I had to please her. If it had been ancient times, she would have been the lady of the manor and I the servant bound to her household. But in modern society, she could address me in a way that seemed equal, calling me the older brother who grew up with her. But truthfully, calling me brother was giving me too much credit. After all, I was just the son of her family's maid and happened to be 1 year older. As for my mother, she was a woman of misfortune, trapped for years under my father's domestic violence. That night, while he was drunk, she finally escaped. I had run barefoot down the street, crying, chasing after her. In the end, she couldn't bear to leave me behind and took me with her. Life in the big city was expensive, but at least easier than in the countryside. With no education and no connections, she could only work as a cleaner taking hourly jobs. But she was lucky. Her employer took notice of her and hired her as a live-in maid for the Liu family, bringing me along. That was my first time stepping into a villa. My first time seeing a family so wealthy. It was also my first time seeing Willow. She came down the staircase in a princess dress, elegant like the princesses I'd seen on the mall's giant screens. I stared, unable to blink, until another equally privileged child beside her snickered at me. And then, for the first time, the princess touched me. Slap. With her palm. She said, "Don't look at me with those lowly eyes." Her voice sharp and cruel. I held my cheek, not daring to cry, my eyes cast down. So this was it. Not all princesses were kind. Chapter 2. I became Willow's lackey. In the words of her childhood friends, I was nothing more than a house-trained servant, though I was a year older than her. I entered school the same year as she did. For no other reason than that she demanded it. I didn't want to, but my mother was delighted. Because this way, she didn't need to save for my tuition. And I could even attend the most expensive school in the city. From elementary to middle school to high school, everything was covered. And from the day she threw her school bag in my face, I never left her side again. She said, "Hold it." When we left the house, I carried her bag. She said, "Don't disturb my sleep." During class, I took notes for her. She said, "If the hot milk at the school gate isn't warm when it reaches me, you can stay in the bathroom with it." During breaks, I ran errands for her. She said, "If you dare tattle, you're dead." Her childhood girlfriends chimed in with laughter. "Hey, Willow, this lapdog of yours is pretty useful, huh? Hey, buy one for me too. Oh wait, you've got no money. Here, pick up what's on the ground, then it's all yours." The homework was done by me, starting with 2 copies and later 5, once I was also writing for her friends. I had no power to resist, no ground to refuse. Because her family was the only lifeline for me and my mother. The malice of children comes without reason. Simply because I was from a different class yet forcibly squeezed into their circle. Back then, I didn't understand. I thought it was just because we were all still young, so they followed this kind of clique culture. I told myself not to be extreme, not to generalize. Not to make the mistake of thinking the world was only what was around me. Yet, when I grew older, I suddenly realized, blindly interpreting others with my own kindness was also a kind of extremity. The environment I lived in, the unspoken rules I followed. They were the world. Class is an unbridgeable chasm. I could never become part of the rich kid circle. So when I appeared in those places that did not belong to me, it was only natural that I felt pain. But when I finally understood this, Willow did not. Even though, from the very beginning, she was the one who taught me so. Chapter 3. Willow didn't think she was bullying me. In fact, I gradually stopped thinking she was bullying me either. Once someone lives long enough in an unreasonable environment, that environment naturally begins to feel reasonable. Not to mention how it looked to outsiders. The Liu family was truly good to my mother and me. When I was 15, they even gave me a separate room, right next to my mother's. When I went out with Willow, I rode in her family's different luxury cars. The school we attended was a well-known elite private school. Our uniforms were custom-made by the school. What Willow's family ate and drank was never what ordinary people could afford. At first glance, I was living the life my mother had never dared to imagine. She always wiped her eyes and said, "This is really good now." Yes, compared to that young rural woman who used to suffer domestic violence. Life now was really good. I gradually got used to it. Willow was the heiress. I accepted, with a numb calmness, the name they gave me, Mrs. Lackey. Here, at least, the material conditions were undeniably excellent. I grew taller and kept my grades in the top 10 of my year because I dared not slack off. By high school, some girls even started talking about me. The first time I was playing basketball and a girl came over to bring me water, I knew I was finished. That day was one of the rare times Willow lost her temper. She flew into a rage. "Which one of your things wasn't given by my family? You eat what my family gives and drink what my family gives, so you turn out like that. You're using my family's stuff to pretend to be a rich second-generation kid to pick up girls. What, are you trying to usurp the nest and turn host into guest? Lowly things are lowly after all. No matter how much you're raised, an ingrate never gets tamed. You're a parasite, just like your mother." She shouted at me and I didn't even lift my head. I stood there holding her school bag and let her have her outburst. The heiress was undoubtedly elegant and beautiful. Even when her mouth spat cruel words and she sounded like a shrew, her bearing remained that proud noble princess. But when she started insulting my mother, I looked up and stared at her without expression. Perhaps my behavior offended her. She stopped mid-curse as if suddenly uneasy. She pressed her lips together, a little guilty. But how could that be? Heiress Willow could never be guilty before anyone. She was always right, always above others. Always able to keep me beneath her feet. Come to think of it, since the time in 4th grade when I pulled her out of the water, she hadn't stepped on me with her foot for a long time. This was the first and only time since then. She stepped on me, ordered her bodyguards to throw me into the basement, and had me locked up for 2 whole days. My mother didn't look for me. She was told I'd gone on a study tour and she believed it. That day she opened the basement door and looked down at me from above. I had been cooped up for 2 days, my whole body reeked, and I was covered with the bruises left from when her bodyguards had disciplined me, miserable and disheveled. She still looked like a princess, a pretty white dress, a crystal hairpin, peachy pink lip gloss. Those beautiful almond-shaped eyes looked at me with only contempt as she asked if I knew what I'd done wrong. I didn't know what I had done wrong. But I obediently admitted it. She was satisfied and let me go, telling me to hurry and wash. "You stink." Behind her, her childhood friends watched me with eyes full of disgust, their contempt barely hidden. Chapter 4. It wasn't hard to notice that Makoto liked Willow. Plenty of people liked her, after all, she was beautiful and came from a good family. Her arrogance was only aimed at me. In her own circle, she was practically the embodiment of truth, goodness, and beauty. After all, how many heiresses would lower themselves to call the maid's son brother? Share food and drink, spend money and effort on him, and even bring him along everywhere. To them, she was nothing short of an angel. Yes, many people liked Willow. And Makoto was the one most suited to the saying, "The pavilion closest to the water gets the moon first." Of course, they never counted me in. What was I, after all? Say that Willow liked me. That was nothing but the heiress's possessiveness at work. She would get angry even if I passed an exam paper to the student behind me. Let alone if someone tried to lower her place in my order of priorities. Though I hated to admit it, in my short life so far, Willow ranked first right after my mother. I couldn't blame my mother, and I couldn't blame Willow. The only one to blame was myself. I was the one who insisted on following my mother when she escaped. I was the one who appeared in front of Willow when I shouldn't have. She happened to need a lackey to order around. And I happened to be there. Everything was just so coincidental. Makoto mocked me, "You're overestimating yourself, a toad dreaming of eating swan meat. Don't you dare harbor any foolish fantasies." After school, Makoto cornered me in an alley with a few others. They deliberately hit me only where clothes could cover. Careful not to leave obvious marks, afraid Willow might find out and cause trouble. Over the years, their treatment of me had evolved. Once, as an outsider in their circle, they bullied me for sport. But ever since I saved Willow from drowning in 4th grade, she forbade her friends from laying hands on me. Makoto, defiant, once slapped me. Willow then gave him the cold shoulder for a whole week, even threatening to break off their friendship. Seeing Willow meant it, Makoto panicked. He showered her with gifts, spoke countless apologies, and even slapped himself twice in front of me to atone. Only then did Willow forgive him. Since then, his hatred for me only grew, but he became smarter. He no longer hit me in front of Willow. Instead, he resorted to sneaky tricks behind her back. Maybe it was because of my stubborn refusal to yield. Or maybe because no matter who struck me, I would ignore the others and go straight for Makoto. He lost his temper and for the first time went in brutally. I collapsed on the ground, spat blood, and coughed hard, my chest aching. He had just swung a baseball bat into my ribs. I guessed one was cracked, which explained why every cough made me spit more blood. The others, seeing blood, grew nervous and backed away. Only Makoto remained unfazed. He used the bat to lift my chin, his expression full of disgust as he looked at me. He said, "Don't ever think Willow would fall for you. You're nothing but her dog. Be smart and stay the hell away." Chapter 5. The moment Willow rushed forward and hugged me, I couldn't help but cry out in pain. I was so weak I couldn't stand steady. And I dragged her down onto the carpet with me. Of course, I still remembered to cushion her fall beneath me, but through the torn sleeve of my shirt, she caught sight of the bruises on my arm. Beneath my clothes, my body was covered in overlapping old and new wounds, dense and frightening. She burst into tears. It was the first time I saw her cry. The first time she cried for me. Her voice trembled as she said, "Who did this? Who dares bully someone from the Liu family? George, why didn't you tell me? George, does it hurt?" The heiress's tears were even more unbearable than her cruel words. If her parents ever found out she shed tears for me, my fate would be worse than now. Luckily, during this time, the family business was expanding and required her parents to travel often. Luckily, Makoto's family power wasn't as strong as Willow's, so he could only endure. Luckily, that day, I waited and waited until the timing was perfect for me to appear before Willow. Luckily. So lucky. The day Makoto was forced to leave school and go abroad, Willow didn't even glance back at him once. But I did. Across the crowd, I looked at him calmly, lips curving up at just the right moment. His eyes went bloodshot with rage, unwillingness, and disgust, all twisting his face into something revolting. I only lifted Willow's schoolbag off her shoulder in silence. From afar, it looked as if I had my arm draped around her. Fallen leaves dropped soundlessly beneath a great tree, decaying into the soil as nourishment. In a twisted environment, sickly vines grow unchecked. Chapter 6. Makoto was gone. And it was as if I was the one walking side by side with Willow. But the heiress could never be with the maid's son. She herself could never accept something so filthy. She was just used to me being by her side. Beneath the blazing sun, Willow tossed aside the freshly squeezed juice her parents had prepared for her, dropping it into the trash with disdain. Girls at this age are rebellious, as if their bodies no longer fit their own shells. Like fledglings desperate to break through their shells. The endless instructions of their parents grow loathsome, while hidden controls seep into every aspect of life, making them yearn to shatter the rules. So they begin testing boundaries in places out of their parents' sight, rebelling from the smallest and most trivial of things. I sat beside her, twisting open a bottle of cheap sparkling water. The moment I opened it, she snatched it away. With a haughty little hum, she said, "If I want to drink it, I'll drink it." She tipped her head back and gulped it down, her lips leaving a mark on the bottle's rim. Silently, I wiped the drops of water from the corner of her lips with my school uniform sleeve, as though I were handling something fragile. Willow lifted her chin and turned her head away indifferently. But through the veil of her hair, I caught sight of the faint blush at the tips of her ears. After school, a sudden storm hit. The driver was waiting at the school gate. I tilted the umbrella toward her and followed closely behind, half my body drenched in the downpour. Her shoes splashed water with each step on the flooded ground. I frowned, thinking that this pair of white shoes would probably be discarded again tonight. After all, the heiress hated dirty things most of all. But the very next second, a sweet fragrance drifted toward me. Willow turned toward me, tugged on my collar, pulling me so close the umbrella handle pressed against her chest and left a red mark. She said, "Stand closer. If you catch a cold, who's going to do my homework?" Through the raindrops spinning off the umbrella's edge, I secretly traced the hollow of her collarbone with my side gaze. Willow was beautiful. And her family was powerful. Many people liked her and Willow knew this well. As if responding to everyone's expectations, she would sometimes show a hint of tenderness in return. Willow loved the feeling of being admired, being liked. So I had to like her too. Chase her too. I couldn't be the exception. But unlike the others, I had stopped dreaming long ago. I no longer dreamed of my father's fists. Nor did I dream of a bright future. I only knew clearly what I had to do to make Willow like me as well. It was selfish, calculated, I merely used my feelings for her. I knew this hazy youthful affection wouldn't last long, because I could be the playmate she practiced house games with, the doting boyfriend she rehearsed with, the servant of a noble heiress obeying her every command. But that was only a side note. It could never be the main theme of her life. I was not worthy of shaping Willow's future. So when Willow's father, who rarely spoke to me, appeared before me, I knew my time was up. The acceptance letter I had dreamed of was placed in front of me. Mr. Liu said, "Thank you for taking care of her all these years." He continued, "Willow is a flower raised in a greenhouse, naive, willful, reckless." The next second, he handed me another letter. "You see, she's even received her admission to Cambridge." He chuckled softly then, as though recalling something amusing. Wearing expensive loungewear, seated properly in the family's tea room. Even in the casual act of brewing tea, his presence carried a cold, commanding aura. Yet wrapped beneath the shell of a loving father, it appeared courteous and refined. He went on, "She told me she didn't want it. She said she didn't want to go abroad. She wanted to attend the same university as you." He set the teacup steadily before me while secretly I clenched my palms tight. He said, "You're a good kid." He savored a sip of tea. The liquid was amber, golden ripples reflected at the bottom of the white porcelain cup. Then he said, "There are some truths you should already understand." Of course, I understood. The moment I walked out of the tea room with that acceptance letter in hand, I finally let out a breath of relief. Those glaring words on the page. At last, they meant I could leave the Liu family. Chapter 7. Willow was furious. When the ink on the Cambridge acceptance letter blurred under the sweat on my fingertips, she suddenly slapped the envelope across my face. She shouted, "Get it away, didn't I tell you to get it away, can't you understand?" The parchment tore against my cheekbone like the class divide between us that could never be crossed. I picked up the shredded pieces and said calmly, "The housekeeping lady said, the gilded paper should be recycled." She stepped on the back of my hand without mercy and said, "Garbage belongs in the trash." I remained silent. She was the one having a tantrum, yet she was also the one crying. I sighed and patted her head. "Study well," I told her. The next second she lunged like a projectile and buried herself in my arms. She hugged me tightly, choking on her words, "I hate you." Her breath fell against my chest, hot enough to scorch the beating thing inside me. She said, "Don't ever show up in front of me again." The air still carried the cloying scent of roses from her clothes. The door, however, had long since been pushed wide open. I picked up the gilded scraps the housekeeping lady had said to recycle. Even if it was trash, it had to be sorted properly. The day I packed up to go to university, my mother cried. She said she never imagined the day would really come. I wiped her tears with a tissue and told her things would get better. At university there was no Willow. There was none of her circle. I reclaimed my name, George. Work-study life was harder than before. I held 3 jobs, tutoring, a cafe, translation. Because of following Willow years ago, my English and French were decent enough. I didn't dare slacken my studies. Scholarship money each year helped a lot. Sometimes I was so tired I'd nearly doze off while showering. My roommates were good people, each of them wanted to be everyone's dad. But they also did fatherly things, saving my seat, reporting for me, taking notes, and dragging me back into bed when I fell asleep standing up. At first it was unbearably hard. One night when I was out for a run and looked up at the stars, I thought of Willow for the first time in a long while. She always seemed to glitter like the sky eternal above me, looking down. I could never reach her, yet she could shine on me. But I knew this was not love. Chapter 8. The first year I returned to the Liu household. I saw Willow Liu again. After all, it was the Lunar New Year. She had taken leave to fly back from England. The whole Liu family was lively. This year their business had expanded yet again. Or rather, it was no longer just a company but a full-fledged conglomerate. And with her came Makoto. Truly, it had been a long time since I'd seen him. But this time, I was looking down at him. Only because I was standing on a step ladder pasting Spring Festival couplets for the Liu family. Everyone in the Liu household except Willow placed great importance on Chinese traditions. After finishing the couplets, I glanced at my fingers stained red by the ink. Looking down, I saw Willow arm in arm with Makoto right beneath me. Willow didn't look at me, but Makoto did. Those eyes always filled with disgust, now glimmered with pride and mockery. I rubbed my stained fingers without responding. Only after they had gone inside did I climb down the ladder and return to my own room. I hadn't forgotten Willow's words, "Don't ever show up in front of me again." Keeping promises was one of my few virtues. That night, after applying a medicated patch to ease my mother's back pain, I went back to my room. A familiar rose scent hung heavily in the air. Her soft body pressed against my back. I hadn't turned on the light, and neither had she. She wasn't even wearing shoes. The pair of leather wool slippers sat neatly at my bedside. I patted her hand, signaling for her to let go. Then I walked over, picked up the slippers, and guided her to sit on the chair. I helped her slip them on. I said, "They're cold." But she deliberately lifted her leg and kicked them off again. Her pale calf slid out from beneath her satin nightdress, stretching out before me. Whiter than the snowy New Year's Eve landscape outside. I bypassed her leg, retrieved the slipper, and placed it back on her foot. When she tried to kick it off again, I pressed it gently to the floor. I said, "Go back." The room was dim, lit only by faint light spilling through the window. I couldn't see her face, only hear her breathing turn uneven. She said, "Don't regret this." She stood, her head only reaching my collarbone, her figure slimmer than before. It seemed English food hadn't suited her taste. She waited a moment, but I still said nothing. The sound of those soft, expensive leather slippers stomping across my floor was deafening. The door slammed shut. Soon after, I heard a maid's voice in the hallway. "Ah, Heiress, why are you crying? Get out." I still didn't turn on the light. My lungs filled with nothing but the scent of roses. Mistakes can be corrected, wounds may heal with time. But could sincerity and obsession, feelings nearly equal to love, truly erase everything? I'm sorry. Affection cannot change the fact of who was the bully. Affection cannot erase what already happened. I don't hate Willow. But I don't love her either. I am just a lowly ordinary person. Only wanting to take my mother away. Chapter 9. The Liu family had always treated us well. Willow's parents were kind even to the servants. My mother worked there for 16 whole years. When she finally left, she received a generous red envelope. The day I took her away, Willow wasn't there. She rarely came back anymore and I hardly saw her at all. She not only studied abroad but was planning to work and settle overseas. As the Liu family's only daughter, there was simply too much for her to learn and take part in. And the distance between her and me grew wider and wider. One day, the housekeeper cleaning her room accidentally found stacks of plane tickets, flights from London to the city where my university was. In those 3 years, she hadn't been with Makoto. And had even refused the marriage her father tried to arrange. I no longer knew the details of her life. Later, I got busier myself. I joined a project that achieved good results. And my professor asked if I wanted to pursue graduate study directly. From that day on, I cut back on part-time jobs. Life became hectic. My mother followed me to this new city. At first, she often said she wasn't used to it, that she missed the Liu household. But eventually she made new friends. And her days became full of warmth and flavor. One late night, on a road littered with fallen plane tree leaves, I saw Willow again. She looked exhausted. Silver high heels glimmered coldly in the moonlight, just like the chill on her face, both cold and expensive. The smell of alcohol lingered on her, but her expression was blank. She leaned against a tree, watching the leaves fall. Her breath turned to white mist in the midnight air. The red headlights of a Ferrari cut through the fog, softening even the ivory trench coat she wore. She had turned from a bright fiery red rose in the sun into a damp white rose in the mist. That night, my mother had gone on a sunset group tour with her friends. So Willow lay on my bed and slept through the night. The next morning, I cooked millet and yam porridge for her. She drank it silently and left without saying a word. Later, I learned from the news. Willow's father had brought home his illegitimate son. Of course, Mr. Liu was a shrewd businessman. He calculated even the value of his children. If his daughter refused marriage alliances, then elevating his son was only natural. The Liu family's inheritance battle hit the headlines many times. Every time my mother saw it, her heart ached. She was of course on Willow and her mother's side. After all, she had watched Willow grow up. So when Willow finally became the heir of the Lu conglomerate, my mother cooked a feast that very night and even invited Uncle Marco to celebrate together. I raised a glass to my blushing mother and Uncle Marco, then ate 2 full bowls of braised pork. It was a celebration for Willow. But when I returned to my room, I destroyed all the documents Willow had once asked me to prepare. On my screen, her messages remained lines and lines of our past exchanges. Only the last one stood out, sent just 30 minutes before I won. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Her avatar showed her radiant confident smile at a Swiss ski resort. Beautiful, proud, dazzling. I thought for a moment, then typed my reply. "Congratulations, Heiress." Chapter 10. Graduate school was even busier than undergrad. My advisor treated me well, giving me far more opportunities than I had expected. I went from visiting home once a week to once a month. The last time I went home, my mother and Uncle Marco had registered their marriage. They were officially family. That night my mother cried heavily. She said she never imagined she could live this kind of life. She had said the very same words the day I got into college. I only patted her shoulder and told her, "The future will be even better." But she didn't need my comfort anymore. Uncle Marco was by her side, flustered but earnest, making her laugh through tears. Life kept improving. For her. For Willow too. She was outstanding, always making headlines in the finance section. Beautiful, capable, the perfect public image of an heiress. She was busy, I was busy. Yet sometimes, she appeared in the middle of the night. The plane tree turned yellow, bare, sprouted, greened. She had watched its cycle through all 4 seasons. The last time I saw it, its leaves had turned yellow again. She wasn't wearing sharp stilettos anymore but soft leather shoes. I told her not to step in the mud, her shoes would get dirty. She ignored me, grinding her heel into the soil a few more times. Yes, she had never listened. She asked, "Graduated?" Her voice was colder than before. I nodded calmly. I pulled out a wet tissue, planning to clean the dirt off her shoes. She asked, "Then are you coming with me?" The damp paper chilled my fingers as I crouched to wipe her shoes. "I'm going to England," I said, "for my PhD." Her relaxed legs stiffened suddenly, making the shoe bulge awkwardly. She pressed her lips together. "Already arranged." I nodded again. "Got the offer." She gave what seemed like a bitter laugh, her radiant bold face staring straight at me. After a pause, she said, "I'm getting engaged next week." My hand froze. I clenched the dirty tissue tightly, then looked up. "Congratulations." Her amber eyes locked onto me and again she asked the same question. Drawing in a breath, she pressed, "Don't you have anything else to say to me?" I folded the wet tissue in half, thought for a moment, then said flatly, "I wish you happiness." That day, Willow lost her temper. For the first time since 4th grade, she slapped me. The mark on my face was obvious. My seniors laughed it off as if it were a joke, teasing lightly that I must have been punished by my wife the night before. As if being slapped by one's wife was some kind of blessing. Only one junior sister grew indignant, shouting that she should call the police. The headlines were full of the Lu heiress's engagement to the heir of the Bai family in City C. That night, my mother cooked braised pork again to celebrate. I didn't go home. I didn't eat it. On the screen, they looked like a perfect match. By late August, I was pulling my suitcase toward airport security. The screen displayed Willow in her luxurious engagement dress, beautiful, its design almost like a wedding gown. She and her fiancé looked like a perfect couple. I thought, if I had the chance, I'd like to see it in person. She must look stunning. The next moment, my wish was granted without warning. She appeared before me in a wedding dress, eyes reddened. "George, I order you, don't go." She was so beautiful in that gown, still as proud as the princess she had been in childhood. Even now, wanting me to stay, she used the voice of command. But I only pried her hand gently off mine. I wiped the tears from her carefully done makeup and handed her steadily to the bodyguards who had caught up. She bit her lip. "Don't you have anything to say to me? Fine. If you won't, I will. George, I sighed, cutting her off. "Heiress Willow. It's time for me to go." That was the last time I ever saw her in real life. She was still as beautiful as a princess. The tears didn't mar her flawless makeup. Her high heels clicked as she walked away, graceful and noble. In this lifetime, she would always be out of my reach. Chapter 11. I didn't return to my country, I stayed in England. When my mother and Uncle Marco came to visit me, she said with delight, "I never thought I'd have the chance to go abroad in my lifetime." I smiled and poured her a cup of tea. I had told her before, life would keep getting better. Cookies are ready. Anna brought out a tray of freshly baked biscuits. The rich aroma and crisp taste left my mother and Uncle Marco full of praise. Anna was the junior who once shouted about calling the police. She never did, but she reported things to the school. She came to England to study abroad and stayed. She even stayed by my side. We got married at the start of the year and settled in England. I never saw the Heiress again. But the smart home brand often used in our house was founded by the Liu family. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of her in the news. She was formidable, making international headlines. Still bold, confident, and beautiful, yet even more captivating than before. 2 years after her engagement, she broke it off. Her new brand launched in City C. The Bai family expanded their market in the mainland. Even now, suitors surrounded her. But an heiress would always be the one choosing others, never the other way around. On my wedding day, an anonymous gift appeared at our table. When I opened it, I found a scarf. Its pattern was plain leaves, and it carried the lingering scent of roses. I never wore it. Anna put it away in our wardrobe. She knew of the Heiress through my stories and the things she had seen herself. But she understood well, those were stories of the past. The scarf remained in the closet ever since. Later, Willow even had Makoto apologize to me. Once, in her anger, she asked if I wanted her to apologize. But no, that wasn't what I needed. There's a saying, an apology is nothing more than a rehash of harm for the victim, a hypocritical phrase from the perpetrator expecting forgiveness. In some sense, I gained far more benefits than the harm I endured. So I refused to cast myself as a victim. But that doesn't mean they weren't perpetrators. She once said, "I won't let them bully you again." But she forgot. She never had the right to let others bully me in the first place. I don't hate the Heiress. I don't hate the Liu family. I don't hate Makoto. But I simply cannot love her. In the end, I love myself more. And the better life ahead.